Hey everyone, CKY here today looking to do another walkthrough. This time we're on the platform TryHackMe and the challenge internal. This video might be slightly longer than some of my others because there's a lot going on in this challenge. This challenge was designed so that you could actually write a pen test report. There's a lot of things in here that would go into a pen test report, such as information disclosure. However, this doesn't help complete the challenge itself. Please bear in mind that my video solely focuses on completing the challenge and not going into these other avenues. So with that out of the way, let's look to get cracking on with this challenge. First thing we're instructed to do is amend the host file. This is no doubt to emulate a proper pen test and working with host names as opposed to the IP address. So let's look to edit /etc/hosts. And your IP address will be different from mine, but in my case I'm going to put 10.10.144.58, associate that with internal.thm, save the file, and then I'm going to test by pinging the hostname itself. And as we can see, we get a reply there and we are good to go. From there we'll look to do our initial scan. Now I'm just going to do a basic scan in aid of time here. What I would recommend is, if you're doing these challenges yourself, is that you may wish to look at a much wider port range to make sure you do not miss any services that may be running. Okay, and we get our results back here, and immediately we see that there's only 2 services operating on this victim machine. We've got port 22 for SSH and we've got port 80 for web services. Now normally when I see port 80 open, I would browse to that site and see what content is available there. However, in aid of time for this challenge, I'm just going to go straight into the directory search. I'm going to use dir search for this function, but you can feel free to use any tool that you're familiar with. So I will use dirsearch.py -u followed by the host name, followed by -w, and then the word list that we're going to use for this. I'm going to use common.txt, which is in the dirb folder. We'll then execute this search. And as we can see from our results, we've got a phpMyAdmin, so we're hosting a database. In this case, it's MySQL. We can also see an instance of WordPress here. Now, the first result we get is internal THM blog, which is likely being delivered via WordPress. So let's look to browse to that URL. So we'll do internal THM/blog. And as we can see, we get the site here being delivered via WordPress. Normally we'd browse through all of these details. I've already done this and I certainly couldn't find anything of value at this point. So from here, what I'm going to do is return to the terminal and do some more directory busting. Okay, I'll clear the terminal to make it easier to view, but I'm going to probe this blog URL and see if there's any other folders of interest there. So I'm going to launch dir search again. This time for the host, I'm going to put internal.thm/blog. And I'm going to use the same word list that we did previously, which is common.txt. So we'll execute this search here. And when we get our results, the one that immediately stands out to me is the WP admin page. Now I'll be honest, first time I did this challenge, I was looking around trying to find credentials or any clues that would help me get logged into this. Ultimately, I ended up brute forcing the login on this one, and that's the process that I'm going to take you through just now. So let's look to browse to the admin page here. So go internal THM blog WP admin. And what I'm going to guide you through here is the process of building a brute force HTTP post form in Hydra. So, in order to do this, Let's open up Burp Suite. We can just close the update there. And as it's Community Edition, just Next and Start Burp. And I'm quickly going to turn off the intercept in the proxy settings here so that I don't have to approve every request. Then I'll minimize Burp, and I need to enable my proxy settings in my browser. I'll do that via Foxy Proxy, but if you're using a different browser or don't have Foxy Proxy, you'll need to manually edit your proxy settings to point to Burp. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in an authentication attempt. We'll use the username admin and a random password. Don't use password because sometimes it can make building the syntax for Hydra a bit more difficult, but I'll explain that later. So I'm just putting the password why me, but you can use anything you like. So we've put in our invalid credentials here, and our next step is going to be to return to our terminal here. I'll clear the screen to make it a bit easier to read here. And now we're going to start building our Hydra syntax. So what we'll do is we'll start by inputting the command Hydra. We put -L for the username and we're going to target admin. We put -P because we want to use a password list. Now the list I'm going to use is just rocku.txt, which I'm sure you're familiar with. We then put in the host name, internal.thm. And then we add HTTP post forum. This is because it's a post request that we're looking to brute force. Now in order to do this, we need 3 pieces of information, which I'm going to type out on screen to aid with the explanation, but we will remove these as we populate these entries going along, and I guide you through that, okay? So we need a login page, a request body, and the error message. Each of these is separated by a colon. So let's look to get the first piece of information that we need here, which is the login page. So we'll return to our Burp Suite here, and what we're going to do is go to HTTP history and look for our post request. We can see it here, internal HTM, and the top line, blog WP login, is our login page. What we do is we simply copy that and we put that at the start here, so we'll remove login page up until the first colon and paste that entry in there. Next item, request body. Let's go back to Burp, and at the bottom line we will see the request body here, okay? Again, copy this line and we're simply going to paste that into our request body portion of our Hydra syntax. So we'll remove request body, paste it in there. Now we're not quite done because there's 2 variables that we need to change here, okay? We take out admin for our username and replace that with user with the caret symbols at either side. We also change the password. This is why I said don't use password, so it's easier to see. And there we put pass with a caret at either side. Now the last piece of information we need is the error message. There's a couple of ways to get this, but in this occasion we'll just look at the response to our post request in Burp. If we scroll down here, we will see there it says the password you entered for the username. Now that's the only part we need here, so we'll copy that. We'll then remove error message because that's just there as a guide again, and we'll paste the actual error message in there, okay? Now that's us built our Hydra syntax and we're ready to now try brute forcing this login. Now I'm going to do a bit of video editing here to speed the results up, but in your case, if you be patient, you will get the result which has just appeared on screen. Okay, so let's clear the terminal here And from there, we're then going to return to the WP login. I'll turn off my Foxy proxy here, don't need that anymore. And we will use our newfound credentials here to log into the WordPress site. When you do log in, you do get an email verification. You can click on remind me later, but be patient, it's not the quickest at processing. So now that we're logged in as admin, we'd normally have a look through the site here, see if there's any crucial information in here. If we have a look in posts, for example, there's a private post listed here, and if we go in there, we can see that there's actually a private message relating to resetting credentials. Again, this is part of the pen test element of this challenge because I couldn't find a use for those credentials, so hence why I've not blanked them out. So, moving on with the challenge, when I see PHP, what I'm going to look to do is get a reverse shell from this. So, if we do a search for PHP reverse shell, the first hit we get, Pentest Monkey, PHP reverse shell from GitHub, and I'm simply going to look to copy that reverse shell. So we'll click on the reverse shell there, click on raw, take the entire contents of that reverse shell, copy to the clipboard. We'll then return to our WordPress instance. We click on Appearance and then Theme Editor. And then we're simply going to replace a valid page with our PHP reverse shell syntax. So scroll down the right hand side and we're looking for main index template, which is index.php. Click on that. Now here we get the current syntax, and all we're going to do is remove the syntax that's there. We'll paste in our PHP reverse shell script. Now we need to scroll back up here because there's two pieces of information that we need to change, which is the IP address and the port. So for the IP address, put in your IP address of your attack box. I'm putting 10.8.105.34 as that's mine. I'm going to choose port 4444 through force of habit. And then we simply click on update file. And now we're ready to launch this. But before we do that, let's minimize our window there, and we need to remember and start our reverse shell listener. So let's do netcat. We'll start it on port 4444. We'll then return to our browser, and if we go to internal thm/blog, we can then return to our terminal here, and we can see we've caught a reverse shell. I'll do a who am I there just to show who we are. And we're dub data. Now, I'm highlighting here that we don't have a fully functional terminal. Now, you don't have to do this bit, but I want a fully functional terminal here. So I'm going to upgrade this. So I'm going to launch /usr/bin/script -qc /bin/bash /dev/null. After that, we use the command export uppercase term equals xterm. And now we have a fully functional terminal, and I can access the clear commands, etc. But as I said, you don't have to do that bit. Now moving on with the challenge here, I did look for exploits, etc. here, but there aren't any. So as part of the walkthrough, what we're going to do is we're simply looking for a text file here. So we're going to use the find command. We're going to look solely for files, and we're going to use name with the extension star.txt, and we'll also redirect the standard error output. Now once we get our results here, we simply want to start scrolling back up. The entry that we're looking for is very near the top here. Apologies for the delay there. As we can see in the OPT directory, there's a file called WP save. So we'll just copy that entry there. I'll clear my terminal here to make it easier to read. And all we're going to do is cat that entry out. And when we do that, as we can see here, we get our credentials that we require. Just going to copy those credentials to the clipboard there. Then I'm going to exit my terminal. I'll clear the screen here. And then we'll simply use these credentials to create an SSH session to our victim machine. So we'll do SSH Aubriana at internal.thm. Paste our password. And then we get our terminal. If we do an ls, we can see the user.txt, and then we can simply cat that out to get that flag. Also in there we can see a jenkins.txt. So I'll clear the terminal and we'll look at this further. If we cat jenkins.txt, it informs us that there is a Jenkins service running on a different IP address on this machine on port 8080. Now just to confirm this, we can use the netstat command. And from the resultant output, we can in fact see that on this local host, there is a service listening on port 8080. Now we know we don't have access to that from our scans, it's a different IP address, so what do we do to get access to that? Well, what we're going to do is use a technique called SSH tunneling. What that allows us to do is create an SSH connection to the server, but we tell the server that any traffic it receives on a specific port from us to redirect it to a different port on that local server. So in order to do this, we'll leave our SSH session and go back to our terminal. We'll do SSH-L. We then pick a source port where our traffic originates from. An arbitrary port, I'm going to use 5555. We then specify localhost because the service we're connecting to is local to the SSH server, and we put port 8080 because that's what we want to connect to. We put the username Aubriana at internal.thm because that is the SSH server we're connecting to. We'll then paste our password in there. And we have now created our SSH tunnel. It does look like a normal SSH session, so in order to test that, what we're going to do is open a web browser. We'll do HTTP. We want to connect to a local host, so we'll use IP address 127.0.0.1. And we put in our source port that we specified. In my case, it was 5555. And as we can see, we get a Jenkins login page. Now basically what we've done here is we've managed to use an SSH tunnel to pivot using a machine that we had access to and gain access to a service that wasn't originally available to us. So moving on with the challenge, it gets a bit deja vu here because that's us got another login page that we need to brute force with Hydra here. So again, we're going to have to go back to using our Burp Suite. So let's open up Burp Suite here. Just to make it easier to view, I'm going to right click and clear all the history here. So we're good to go with Burp. I will then enable my Foxy proxy here. And as before, we're going to use the username admin and I'll put in a random password. I'll just put why me again. Click sign in. And now we're ready to start building the Hydra syntax. So to do this, let's return to our terminal here. Now, this is the original SSH session that I'm looking at, not the SSH tunnel. Do not cancel that one. I'm going to close the original SSH session. I'll clear the terminal to make it easier to read. And then we can start building our Hydra syntax. So, again, we do Hydra -L for the username, which is admin, -uppercase P because it's a password list we're using. Again, I'm just going to use RockU. Now, here we have to specify the local host because we're using our SSH tunnel to redirect the traffic. Okay, so the IP address will be 127.00.1. We follow that with a -s and our port number. In my case, it's 5555. Then we put HTTP post form. Again, we'll build our syntax here. We've got the login page, we need the request body, and the error message. So the first piece of information, let's go to Burp, and we're looking for the login page. So we have the post request right at the top here. Click on that, and we will simply look at the request. We see the post request at the top here, and we can simply copy this entry here. Return back to our Hydra syntax, and we can replace the login page element. Next step we need is the request body. Back to Burp again. Down at the bottom here of the request, we have the request body. We'll copy that to the clipboard. We'll then return to our Hydra syntax here. We'll replace the request body there. Paste in our details. Now, as before, two variables to change. We take out admin, put in the caret symbol, uppercase user, caret symbol, and the password. Mine says why me, take that out. Caret, uppercase pass, caret again. Now the final piece of information we need is the error message. Now this time around I'm actually not going to use Burp, I'll just show you a slightly different way. I'm actually just going to return to the login page itself. I'm simply going to copy the error message that's on the login page, and we'll simply paste that in place of the error message here. So we've successfully built the syntax, we'll execute it, and let's see what results we get. And as we can see here, we've successfully managed to brute force the Jenkins login. So with this information, what we'll be able to do is return to the Jenkins login page and hopefully log in as admin. So let's go back to the login page here. Username admin. We'll use the password that we've just acquired. Click on sign in, and we're immediately in Jenkins. Well done. So at this point I can tell you that Jenkins is actually in a Docker container, and what I want to do is get access to that. So let's look to go to manage Jenkins. We'll scroll down and we're looking for the script console. And what I'm going to look to do is get a reverse shell into this, okay? Now in order to do that, let's do a search for payloads all things. Now the first link here is what I'm looking for. Swiss KY repo, payloads all things on GitHub. We're going to go down to the methodologies folder. Methodology and resources to be exact. Look for the reverse shell cheat sheet. And within there, I'm looking for the Java alternative reverse shell. This is the one that I found that works here. So Java alternative 1, let's copy that to the clipboard. We'll then return to our Jenkins script console. Paste the contents in there. Now we obviously need to change the IP address there, so you use your local IP address. In my case it's 10.8.105.34. The port I'm going to change because I can't recall what I previously used, so I'll go for 2222 this time. Now another thing we need to change, cmd.exe won't work because we're looking to target Linux, so we change that with /bin/bash. Before we execute, always make sure we start the reverse shell listener. So netcat-nlvp2222. We're now listening. We'll go back to our script console, scroll down, and far along here you can see the run button. Click on run. If we return to our terminal here, we can see we've caught our reverse shell. Who am I? That shows that we are the user Jenkins. So we're in the home straight here. Now before we progress, I want to have a fully functional terminal. Again, for the purposes of my demonstration here, you don't have to do this part, but I'm going to upgrade it here. So I'm going to do a /usr/bin/script, followed by -qc, bin bash, followed by dev null. After that, I do an export uppercase term equals xterm. Okay, so now I have my terminal there. I will have access to my commands, so I'll do clear to clear the terminal there. And again, it's very similar to earlier. There's no exploits here. We're simply looking for a particular text file, so we're going to use the find command, search for files only, and star.txt. We'll redirect the standard error output. And once we have our results, simply scroll back up right near the top, and as we can see, same folder again, OPT, and there's a note in there, so we'll copy that to the clipboard. I'll clear the terminal here. We'll cut out the contents there, and as we can see, we have the password for the root account which was stored within the Docker container. From there we can copy that to the clipboard. I will then open up another terminal window here, and we'll simply look to SSH to internal THM with root. So SSH root at internal.thm. Paste the password in there, and we have our SSH session. If I do a who am I, we can see that I am indeed root. In order to get the root flag, we'd simply go into the root directory. As we can see, root.txt is there, and cat that out. I'm not going to do that for you, I'll leave that to you. Again everyone, slightly longer video from me than normal. I do apologise for that. It was a very in-depth challenge this, although thoroughly enjoyable. I really hope that you've found some value from this. If you have, I would appreciate it if you'd leave a like for me. If you do want to subscribe, all the better. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for viewing, and let's see you again soon. Thank you.